We are the Childhood Collective, and we have helped thousands of overwhelmed parents find joy and confidence in raising their child with ADHD. I'm Katie, a speech language pathologist.
And I'm Lori.
And I'm Mallory, and we're both child psychologists. We combine the science of ADHD with the compassion of moms and bring you practical tools you can start using today.
So hit subscribe and let's help your family shine with ADHD.
Today, we are welcoming Eli Weinstein to the podcast. We're so excited to chat with him. Eli is a licensed clinical social worker with his own private practice in New York and Nevada, and he specializes in relationships and parenting.
Eli created ELIvation and is the host of the Dude Therapist podcast, where he doesn't just talk with dudes, he just is a dude. And Eli created his podcast to offer a modern outlook on mental health, help those struggling, and add some extra inspiration into everyday life.
Eli also runs events, seminars. He offers individual coaching on topics that range from things like mental health awareness to public speaking to relationship coaching to confidence boosting. Love it.
And on a more personal level, Eli is married to his wife, Ariella, and together they have two beautiful children, Rikki and Max. Thanks for joining us today.
I love this back and forth. It's so exciting. This is so well done.
You never know who's going to talk, right?
I love it. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me on to talk about a real topic. I know I had you guys on my show, and you guys are just unbelievable with what you do and what you bring for so many. So I'm so honored to hopefully bring something to your audience and help you guys out and see where the conversation goes. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're excited. We were on your podcast 2 years ago, right? And a lot has changed since then. Like, what has changed in your business, in your life?
Yeah, well, I have another child since then,
Congratulations.
I have, my little dude, Max. Thank you. And moved out to the West Coast to Vegas to slow down a little bit. I know that sounds weird that Vegas is slowing down, but in the suburban life compared to New York, it was something that was needed for our mental health as a family, my mental health as an individual, and hopefully, who knows, open some doors because of that better lifestyle for ourselves and where it might take us is super exciting.
Yeah.
I love that.
And we were just commiserating about the heat in Vegas and in Phoenix right now. It's awful.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is it's hot everywhere in the summer, whether it's humidity, no humidity. It's
true.
Hot.
Yeah.
Just put on that sunscreen, put on some deodorant, bring change of clothes. Good luck.
Yep. And you know what I say about Phoenix, and I'm sure this is true of Vegas too. If we can tolerate the heat for, 3-4 months, the other 8 months are just amazing. The place to be, totally worth it.
Everyone visits Arizona and Vegas the rest of the year. So there's a reason for that.
So Eli, you are a parent and you have ADHD. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate. Most of the people listening today are parents raising kids with ADHD, and many of them have ADHD themselves. So if you would, we'd love to hear a little bit about your story growing up with ADHD, how and when you got your diagnosis.
Yeah, I was about 7 or 8 when I was diagnosed, and it was pretty clear that I had ADHD. My teacher said that I used to be dancing in class. Mm-hmm. I even found out recently that I was bumped a grade up because I was interruptive. I was too social and too talkative and too who knows the answer? And I would raise my hand. I didn't know the answer all the time. I just raised my hand. And they're like, maybe he needs to be in a more advanced class. Mm-hmm. That was really horrible actually for me because I felt so much dumber than everyone else because I jumped up to kindergarten and I used to come home and say to my mom, my brain hurts because I wasn't ready intellectually. My brain wasn't ready for that, but everything else was ready. So I was diagnosed when I was 7 or 8, classic route, medication, therapy. And the biggest struggles that I went through as a kid was the social cues. So interrupting people, talking over people, not paying attention to body language. That led to bullying. Also led to people taking advantage because I was a very kind, happy person. Yeah. So I was very easily, can you do my homework and I'll be your friend kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it really impacted my school ability. Writing is my worst nightmare till this day. I always make the joke I'd rather speak in front of 1 million people every day of my life than write a book.
Yeah.
Because speaking comes naturally to me. But writing, grammar, organization, not my thing. It took a lot of hard work with a lot of love and support and frustrating days and nights. A smaller school I end up going to, which really was super helpful to have that attention. Somehow graduated top of my class in grad school, and I'm a functioning human to this day. But yeah, that's like a little synopsis. Of course, there's millions of things that I can say, but that's just a little tidbit of what it was like.
Well, I think so many parents that are in the trenches right now with their kids and have so much stress about like their child having, difficulties with friends. It's nice to hear a hopeful story.
Just for any parent who's feeling that, first of all, please reach out. I would love to be a support. But the reality is that even if your kid doesn't have an official diagnosis of ADHD, every kid goes through social struggles because it's hard. If you talk to teenagers nowadays, the biggest struggle that they're facing are relationships, depth of relationships, honesty in relationships, being hurt by relationships, social media and relationships. Relationships hurts everyone. I know as an adult, I struggle with relationships because making friends as an adult is hard in a different world. But it doesn't have to do with the ADHD. ADHD doesn't help any. But it also means that there's a lot of things, and I'm not here to get into like the debate over superpower or not. But there are a lot of skills that you can take from ADHD and hone them to be an unbelievable friend, an unbelievable person in your marriage or long-term relationship. So it's not a lost cause. I think a lot of parents, when they hear a diagnosis, they freak out. And to me, diagnosis doesn't matter as much as how it impacts someone. And then the biggest thing you should do is love and support that kid or yourself if you're the one struggling with it, because there's ways to figure out and so much help out right now, especially you guys doing all the amazing work you do.
Thanks.
I think this is such an important message for the parents who are listening to hear, though, because like Lori said, we do get messages all the time from parents saying like, can my child be successful in life? Will my child graduate high school? Can my child go to college? Will my child ever move out of my house? There's a lot of fear from parents when they get the diagnosis about their child's future and what that's going to look like for them. So I think it's so helpful for parents to hear from adults with ADHD who have been there and are now successful in life. And I love it when they're the helpers now too.
Yeah.
Just to add something, and this might be controversial, like success is not school.
Yep.
There's
For
more
sure.
to success than school.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I'm glad I graduated top of my class in Fordham in grad school. My mom even told me on the day of graduation, she was so emotional because she never expected that I would get to that point with all the years of the kindergarten, middle school age of mental health and ADHD stuff.
Yep.
She never expected that I would get that far. Not that I wouldn't be successful, but just in the classic sense of success of like, oh, you graduate high school and college, hooray. There's so much success to life than just school.
Yep,
and if your kid finds their niche or niche, and I made up a third one, niche, just to be fancy, like Tarjay, we'll go with niche. I'm trying to start a movement, the niche.
We're on board.
Let's do it. Copyright right here. That if they find their thing and they thrive in it because it connects to them and they love it and they go all in, that's success. If they make money doing it, even better. There's so much greatness and success that can happen other than the confines of the classic rules of success.
Yes. you gave me the chills saying that, because that's just so important for parents to keep in mind. And sometimes we talk about and remind parents, like, you're raising a whole child, and a child is more, like you said, than just what happens at school. A child is more than grades. And we also talk a lot about the point that you got to of helping your child find their niche, helping them find what really lights them up, what brings them joy, and how can we foster and grow that to build confidence and raise successful kids in that sense. And I think that's just such a huge part. But it's very easy for parents to get caught up in school being success, because for so many parents, school is such a big struggle for their child with ADHD. So that's like their day-to-day reality of, can we survive school?
100%.
Yeah. But it's very
100%.
easy then to lose sight of the whole child. But it's such an important point.
We were just checking social media earlier, and you wrote about having a particularly difficult day. Was it related to your ADHD this morning? Or
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what was going on this morning.
So it's interesting. I used to be off medication. During college years, I figured out a way to just deal with life better. My ADHD kind of didn't get in the way of certain things. And since having kids, I have felt more fractured within my mind.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I started back up on medication about a year or so ago. Feel a lot better. And this morning, for some reason, I woke up and I was so hyper focused on the small things of mess around the house. Like, this thing doesn't need to be here. Why haven't we thrown that out yet? This toy doesn't need to be here. We haven't put the stuff away that's on the dining room table. All the little things that make no difference, not that important. But for some reason, my brain was so locked in on that it was making me upset.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, I was making a comment about something, and I said, before I continue, this has nothing to do with what you haven't done or don't do around the house. I am just really locked into these really stupid things, and you're the only other adult in the house that I can talk to. So, but it has nothing to do with you. I need to get that out, because sometimes it can feel, how come you didn't do this? What's wrong with you? You didn't put that away? But it wasn't about that. My mind was just so locked in, and I had to really take a pause and reset to be like, that stuff doesn't matter. I'm focusing on it too much. Step back, focus on my kids.
Yeah. And I would totally be the person to take that personally. Like, I would be like, you're saying that
it's very easy to.
And then I get defensive, and it's not a good situation.
I had to let her know, because she saw, I was not spiraling to the point where I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I was taking this and throwing this away. And then I went in that room and put this away. And then I was like, and the kids were just sitting there having breakfast. I was up with them a little earlier. I was up them at 6 o'clock in the morning, loving and taking care of my kids. And they weren't bothering me or overwhelming me. It was these stupid little things that I just could not look past for some reason. Mm-hmm. And other days, I don't even pay attention to see them.
I can totally relate to that. It'll be like some days, all of a sudden, I don't know why messes and they will have been there for like months. But for some reason, it overwhelms me to even look at it. It's like, how is that possible? I haven't looked at it in 2 months. It's hard. And I think it's just a great example of how your ADHD can impact your day in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect it to.
Everything was going smoothly with my 2 kids up and me. They were being yummy and cute and wonderful. No arguments, no screaming. It was all going well. But this stupid thing had to bring me into this edgy place when everything else was kind of clicking. When other days, those things aren't clicking, and that doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. And, of course, as a parent, I'm sure we'll get into this. And if not, I'll bring it up now. One of the biggest struggles I have with ADHD and parenting is the overstimulation of noise sometimes, where it's so loud or it's too much that I just can't. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't the case this morning. I was all good on all of the fronts, but this little, stupid bottle or whatever it was, that a pen was just sitting there. And I'm like, that doesn't need to be there. Why are we wasting this space? A pen. But yeah, that was my morning.
For my kids, the last thing they want to do when they get home from school is homework.
Totally. And the last thing I want to do after a long day of work is deal with the stress of meal planning, grocery shopping, cooking, and cleaning up the kitchen.
Same here. We tried Hungry Root Grocery Service to help us eat balanced meals while saving time and money every week. It's been a game changer for our weekly meals and snacks, and I love that you can customize groceries based on your kids' or your family's dietary restrictions.
Yes, my husband eats gluten-free, and I love that I can customize groceries based on our family's needs. And not only can I get complete meals delivered, but I can also order my weekly groceries through them. And I'm always amazed at how my kids will try new things just because they came out of our Hungry Root box.
Yes. It's easy to customize your box each week, and you can skip weeks whenever you want. For a limited time, Hungry Root is offering our listeners 40% off your first box, which is amazing. Just be sure to use the code ChildhoodCollective40 so you can get the discount.
We also have the link and the code in the show notes, so you can try Hungry Root today.
So let's talk a little bit more about how you balance your day. and how you stay on top of everything. You obviously have your private practice, you have family, you have young kids. You know, how do you balance all of these things that are going on with your career and family?
I don't.
Yeah.
I do, but it really, I will have to say, I love my wife to the end of the world, and if it wasn't for the support and the balance that she can give, um, I would not be able to do the things I do, as well as I have right next to me, a little legal pad that I write notes on. I use technology to help me keep track of things, reminders and things like that, and things do slip through the cracks. So answering emails, for collaborations, ideas, things that I'm trying to continuously work on, whether it's a year or two of back and forth emails and I forgot, or someone goes, "Oh, we have a meeting this week." I go, "Oh, shoot, I forgot to put that in my calendar." So it is a struggle, and it doesn't mean it gets any easier because I'm on medication or in therapy or working on things. But I just try to find what works for me, and the things that fall through the cracks, I have to just be compassionate to myself that would happen to anyone. A couple of days ago, my daughter was homesick, and I couldn't find the thermometer, and I know that I used it on her in her room and put it down upstairs. I looked in the fridge and freezer just to be safe, because you never know.
Yep.
The cleaning lady put it in a drawer. It wasn't me, right? I didn't drop the ball. I know it was in the bathroom where I left it. But, sometimes we do drop the ball, and that's okay, and sometimes we don't. And I think it's just being kind and utilizing the supports that we can and finding the things that work and don't, and really just hit and miss, figure it out. That works in this scenario. This doesn't work in that scenario. It's all these little things. Whatever it might be, you have to find what works for you so that you can be successful. And success looks different every day. That could be that you got up, kids went to school, and you did your job and you cooked dinner. Maybe you didn't send 30 emails to write a book. I don't know. Or whatever you're doing. That's okay. You can do that tomorrow. And I have this tool that I try to use for myself. I don't know if it's a thing. Maybe I'm making it up. I call it in hand. If I get an email that says, "Hey, yes, we're going to have a podcast recording on Friday at 12 p.m. your time," right then I will put it in.
Yeah.
I will not let that wait because I will forget it.
Yep.
So in hand is something that I try to practice. Of course, I'm not perfect. I do mess up, but that's something I try to do very often so I don't drop the ball as much.
Yeah. I think that's great. I've heard people refer to that similar idea as like the Ohio strategy, only handle it once. It's kind of like when it presents it, if it's going to take less than 5 minutes, take care of it right then.
Yeah.
Only handle it once.
Which is so important with emails and texts, because a lot of times I'll get an email and I'll be like, but then I'm thinking about it like multiple times and it's just not efficient. And then I forget about it.
Also, I'd really love to be able to afford an assistant to help me take that off my mental load.
Yeah.
But that's not possible right now. I also love a private jet. That's not possible either.
Yeah.
But, it's just I have to figure out ways to be my own personal assistant and to ask for help if I need it, whether it's my wife, whether it's the people support system in my life. But I will say, thank God, I haven't ever been consumed by things and my ADHD where I can't function. There are moments where I get certain ways, but for the most part, I've worked very hard over the years to be able to find what works for me.
I love this advice that you're giving parents that have ADHD themselves, because I think it's parallel to the advice that we're often giving parents that have kids with ADHD when it comes to, we're giving you ideas, but you have to find what works for your child, what works for your family. And we get messages from families all the time that will say like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Like, for example, like I made a visual schedule for my child, but they don't even look at it. We have to problem solve here. We have to see why it's not working for your child. Is there a different strategy we can use? It's all about finding what works for you. Right. And also the message that you're sending of that it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to work, and that's okay. Yeah. So in your experience as a therapist, what would you say is maybe a common roadblock or a struggle that you see parents with ADHD bringing to you, and kind of how do you help them overcome that roadblock or struggle that you commonly see?
I was really excited for this question. It's so interesting. I opened my private practice about 2.5 years ago. This past year, I've had so many middle-aged men, 30 to 50, come to me and say, "I think I have ADHD. I'm not sure. Can we talk about it?" I know there's a frazzled state and an anxious state that is the world, so it does bring out symptoms. and things of that nature. But just so interesting that adults, late diagnosis is something that's really picking up steam. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that maybe another time or here.
I know in my private practice, I mostly do testing for ADHD now. And most of the time while I'm doing the intake, the parents, one of the parents or both of the parents are saying, that was me as a kid. Like I just really struggled through school. I was in the principal's office all through middle school. Like they can fully relate to what their child's going through, but they just didn't get help. Like I know in my family, like my brother didn't get diagnosed until late and he has, pretty severe symptoms. But my parents just didn't know. Like they literally didn't know what that was. And I think a lot of people now are realizing, oh, wait, I have these things that now sometimes my kids are getting identified with because we know more about it.
I would agree with Lori that I think that's a part of it, is that more people are aware of it now, and parents are bringing their kids for diagnoses and then end up on a diagnostic journey of their own following their child's. And it's interesting that you say you're seeing a lot of middle-aged men because, well, 96% of our followers are women. We're hearing from a lot of moms who are on their journey. So we're seeing also a lot of women who are now on their diagnostic journey.
Yeah. And the sad part about that truth is that I'm sure you guys know this, but female diagnosis is so much different and harder to kind of pinpoint at a younger age. So later diagnosis makes sense to me because of that statistic and reality versus like the classic ADHD of boys and men being something so much more tangible and able to see outwardly. But yeah, just to answer your question, the two things that I really see a lot of pushback for the parents themselves. It's, by the way, why I went to focus on as a parenting specialist was because I was working with kids and teenagers and realizing I need to focus on parents.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the kids were doing really well or great and the parents were all over the place. To me, it's the willingness to be uncomfortable. I think that's a big barrier that people are like, they come to therapy and like, okay, yeah, I think I have struggled with this and that. And then you push the boundary and you push that line in the sand to change or to work. Oh no, I don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. Or I've never done that before. Or that sounds insane. Who would do that? Trying it once and giving up kind of thing. And the second thing that I've seen is the barrier of being okay with focusing on yourself. I've seen a lot of parents come in or adults talking about the ADHD of their kids or ADHD of themselves and using their kids as the excuse for why they need to do the work. When in reality, no offense, I need you to focus on yourself and why you need to do the work, not for your kids. That's a secondary success. That's a good thing that will end up helping your family, your partner. But you keep saying, oh, for my kid, for my wife, for my husband. What about you? What about for you? And I see that happen, that barrier really stops people from totally embracing the fact I'm struggling and I need help, and use kind of that separation of other people needing me to get better versus themselves.
Absolutely. I think that it's really common for parents to put themselves second.
I know when I went through therapy a couple of years ago, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like literally the hardest thing. And it was just, going in, it's stressful and you're talking about hard things and you're being asked to do really hard things and push yourself to places that you don't a lot of times feel like you can even cope with. But I think, and I know at the end of that is like a lot of freedom to be who you want to be,
Yeah. I love that you said that's my litmus test for a successful therapy. Someone being who they want to be.
Yes. Living your life in a way that you want to live it. So what advice would you give to parents with ADHD when they feel like they're barely keeping their head above water? I mean, again, most of the families that we're working with are just drowning in all of the things, therapies, working on things for themselves, their marriage, school. It's just hard. All of it is really hard. What advice would you give them?
And just to clarify, this is for parents who have ADHD or their kids?
Yeah, parents who have ADHD themselves.
The thing I always say is like, you need to make a must list. Everything else is extra. If your kids are alive, healthy, dressed, and fed, you are a very successful parent. They're not always going to be happy. That's not the goal of parenting. But they are really successful, that you got them out the door. They're going to school. They're going to the things that they're doing, and they're okay. For yourself, what are the must lists? I need to take a shower twice a week, 3 times a week. I need to go to the gym once a week. I need to have a date night once a month, twice a month. Make must lists that you do not falter on and you do not give up on. Some months are harder. I get that. I understand. I'm a parent myself of 2 little kids, sleepless nights, sick days, working full time, and all the things that we do in our lives. It is never going to get easier. It gets more manageable and able to deal with it better. But our thing is, we have to have a must list. All the extra things. Oh, I have to have this thing, and my house has to look this way, and I have to have everything organized and perfect and beautiful. Stop it. You're just stressing yourself out. You're hurting yourself by putting so much pressure on all those extra things. If you have time for them, make 2 lists, a must list and if I have time list. And if you, once the must list is checked off, if you don't have time, you're doing the best that you can. And if you get to the everything else, awesome. Secondly, I would say, and I said this before, but you need to have compassion that you might not be at 80% or 100% some days. And that means that if you're at 20 or 30% and your tank is at 20 or 30%, that's the best that you can do today.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And you can't force yourself to go farther than that if your tank is empty. You got to be okay with the fact that some days are going to be not great.
Yeah.
And that you give yourself love, you give yourself compassion. And the third thing I would say is you need to find a tribe and support. That means your partner. That means family. That means friends. That means social gatherings, a community, whether it's religious community, friend community, who you live, your neighbors, who cares? Because the days that you're at 20 or 30%, that's when you call them and say, hey, I need you. Hey, can my kids come over to get them out of my hair for an hour or 2, just so that I can reset? You made extra food. I made extra food. Can we swap? All these little things, just those 3 things I think are super important.
It's funny. My husband and I are in marriage therapy right now, and our therapist was talking about a Brene Brown podcast, and she was talking about how you talk with your partner about where you're at, like with your number that day.
I've heard that repeated so often the past couple of months because it's been reshared on TikTok.
Yes.
The one sassy thing I have about it is that I've been saying that for so long.
Yes, I know.
And totally Brene Brown is like Brene Brown, so she has the platform.
I know. Right.
But it's such a beautiful point,
But it is, and it's given us away, because what happens to me, instead of saying I'm at a 20 right now out of 100, right? I'm at a 20 right now. I just get angry and irritated, and I'm getting frustrated with everyone. And my husband takes that personally. Of course, my kids take that personally. Whereas if I say, okay, Brant, I'm at a 20 right now. Like, I need help. And we've been using that to like communicate where we're at. We're also realizing that we're often both at like a 20.
Yeah, but that's the truth.
I think that that's important to know, though, that if most days I'm at a 20, that's a problem. Like, we need to change our life, because that you cannot sustain being at a 20 every single day, right?
So I happen to be a relationship specialist and a parenting. Those are the 2 things that I specialize in the most.
Yeah.
And I literally got off a client this morning who I've been working with for about a year or 2. We have a very good relationship, very sassy and honest and real. My wife taught me this years ago. Like, where is your tank at is a question that we ask each other, because some days dealing with the kids doesn't drain you. And some days it makes you at 0. But if I don't know coming into the house that same experience that was a good experience is now something that pulls your energy, and I don't know that, I can't be sensitive, careful, particular, loving. I don't know, like, not that I wouldn't be loving, but I don't know that. So if I come in and go, where's your tank? She's like, 30%. I'm like, okay. I know in my head, don't make stupid jokes, take care of this, step up, do all the things that I need to do that I would normally do, but I have to do. Now I have a better understanding of you, and you had the opportunity to share with me how you feel. So it's a 2-way street. I now get to know you and understand where you're at, and then I get to help. I get to show up.
Yeah.
But if we just get pissed off, or upset
Yep.
at each other, then what?
Yeah.
Why are you angry? I don't know. And then it happens to all of us every time. But that's something I do in my own marriage.
We do that with kids in therapy with, when I was treating kids for anxiety, we'd use a rating scale.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful because, and I do this with my own daughter, I can know how anxious she is in a situation because that tells me, hey, if she's at an 8, 9, or 10, she can't cope alone. Whereas if she's at a 5, I know she can cope if I give her a little encouragement, right?
You speak differently, you deal with her differently.
Yeah, and I might just look at a situation and say, oh, she's refusing to go to school, right? And she's just being defiant. Whereas if I say, where's your anxiety? Oh, it's at a 10. Well, I know to be more empathetic in that situation, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I do that with decision making also.
Yep.
With like moving to Vegas is not an easy thing from New York. I was born and raised in New York all my life on the East Coast. And my wife was at like a 75, 80% in the idea. I was at a 35, 40%. I only made the decision of like, yes, we're doing this when I was at 60 in my head, that I'm not 100% confident, but this sounds pretty good. And I know that you're confident enough. Let's try.
Yep.
Versus like forcing it just because you're at a 90% and I'm at 0. That's not going to make the decision better. But I love that thing with the kids. It's so important to check in with them because if you don't know the number, if you don't know where they're at, all you view them as is a problem, a bad child. They're, well, what's wrong with your behavior? But if I know my kid didn't sleep well the night before, it's all about that conscious parenting, right? It's the understanding and awareness of where your kid is at today. And that also goes with internally where you are at, aware of your number when it comes to being a parent. Because if let's say my ADHD makes me overwhelmed and overstimulated. If I know that I'm dysregulating and I'm at a really heightened state, I can look at my partner and say, I need like 10 minutes. I'm really overwhelmed by the situation, and step away versus not asking for help, reacting a way that you don't want to be, and forcing yourself to be in a situation that continues to overstimulate you and hurt you.
Yeah.
Versus stepping away for 15, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. Your kid's having a tantrum, let them have a tantrum in your house. They're safe. Walk away. Don't keep engaging and getting yourself hyped up and yourself overstimulated and then engage in a negative way. That's not going to help anyone. So that check-in is super important for yourself, for your marriage, for everything you do.
I love this. And I think that it's an important reminder for parents that you matter. How you're doing matters. You have to take care of yourself in order to really take care of your kids. If you have a partner in your home who you can communicate those needs to with as well, that's great. Find your village. But I know that for a lot of the parents listening, easier said than done when we say, you matter, take care of yourself. But it's so important. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Can you tell our listeners who want to connect with you, who want to learn more from you, where they can find you?
Sure. The main source, you can reach out to my Instagram at Eli Weinstein _LCSW. My website is my name, EliWeinsteinLCSW.com. I have a podcast, The Dude Therapist, if you ever want to tune in and listen. But I really mean this with all my heart. My goal in life and my purpose in life is to help people feel loved and compassionate and cared for. I don't know why. I can't explain it. It just is. Please reach out. If I can help, I will try my best too. And if I can't, I will try to give you advice on where to find help. But please don't be afraid to share, be honest, be real with me. I'm not going to bite. I might be sassy, but I have lots of compassion, I promise. But the realness helps. So please reach out if you can.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Shining with ADHD by your hosts, Lori, Katie, and Mallory of the Childhood Collective. If you enjoyed this episode, please like this video and hit subscribe so you can be the first to know when a new episode airs.
If you are looking for links and resources mentioned in this episode, you can always find those in the show notes. See you next time.